10 years undercover, and I finally brought down the entire Vega cartel. On the day I got my life back, my family came to meet me. But the one person I wanted to see most, my daughter, wasn't there. My husband pointed to a girl caked in makeup and said she was our daughter. She was living in the penthouse I'd bought for my real daughter, using the supplementary credit card I left for her, the one with a pin set to her birthday. The statements showed she'd spent over $50,000 last week. But I couldn't even find the mole by the corner of her eye. I smiled, pulled out my service pistol, and pressed it to her forehead. 3 seconds. Tell me where my daughter is. Mine isn't as bad as my memory. 10 years. I had dismantled the largest drug cartel operating out of Mexico. The day I was reinstated, the sun was blinding. My colleagues from the Joint Task Force were there to welcome me. My husband, Greg, was there, but my daughter, Lily, was not. Greg gestured toward a strange girl. She wore heavy makeup, and the scent of her perfume was suffocating. Ava, this is Lily. She's all grown up. I looked at her, at the smooth, unblemished skin at the corner of her eye. My daughter has a tiny, mole-like birthmark by her left eye. A teardrop. I remember. I smiled. The muzzle of my gun met her forehead. Cold steel against warm skin. 3 seconds. Tell me where my daughter is. Mine isn't as bad as my memory. The girl screamed. Greg rushed over, his face pale. Ava, are you crazy? That is Lily. I ignored him. My gaze fell to the girl's neck. A platinum necklace. The pendant was a custom design I'd made myself. Sealed inside was the first baby tooth Lily ever lost. My fingers began to count down. 3. 2. The girl's body trembled like a leaf in a storm. I'll talk. I'll talk, she shrieked, her voice thick with tears. Greg tried to grab my gun. I drove my elbow back into his chest without looking. He grunted and stumbled back. 10 years undercover had honed my reflexes into something he no longer recognized. 2. My voice was devoid of any warmth. The girl broke completely. She's at the North Star Behavioral Center, on the outskirts of the city. The North Star Behavioral Center. I'd heard the name. A lockdown facility for troubled youth, infamous for its harsh methods and high mortality rate. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an icy hand. Why? My daughter, my Lily, why would she be there? I holstered my weapon. The girl crumpled to the floor. Greg's face was a mask of terror and rage. Ava, let me explain. I kicked him aside. Get out of my way. 3. I stormed out of the penthouse. As the elevator descended, I dialed Captain Miller's number. Miller, I need you to run a check on the North Star Behavioral Center. Address, director's name, and full access to all their security feeds. I need it now. On the other end, Miller didn't hesitate. Copy that. Access codes will be on your phone in 5 minutes. Ava, are you? I hung up. I didn't have time for his concern. In the underground garage, a black SUV sat waiting. Standard issue from the department. I yanked the door open and got in. The engine roared to life like a caged beast. The vehicle shot out of the garage and merged into traffic. My phone buzzed. An encrypted file from Miller. Address, director's profile, building schematics, everything was there. Even a link to the live security feeds. I opened the file. The screen split into a dozen small windows. Hallways, rec rooms, isolation cells. Everything was sterile, oppressive white. I scanned through them, frame by frame. My hand was shaking. I was terrified of what I might find. My Lily. Mama's home. Just hold on. For the SUV tore down the highway. The wind screaming through the open window sounded like a chorus of tormented souls. Finally, I found a blind spot in the surveillance. No, not a blind spot. Someone had covered the camera lens with a cloth. But I recognized the number on the door. 307. The critical care isolation ward. My heart stopped. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The SUV shot forward like a black bullet, aimed at the city's edge. The North Star Behavioral Center came into view. High white walls topped with electric fencing. It looked more like a prison. The security guard at the gate tried to stop me. I didn't slow down. I plowed straight through the heavy iron gate. With a deafening shriek of twisting metal, I was inside. The front of the SUV slammed into a concrete planter and stopped. I kicked the door open. Several men in uniforms surrounded me, brandishing stun batons. Who the hell are you? This is private property. I didn't say a word. I just drew my pistol. The black hole of the muzzle silenced them instantly. I walked toward the main white building, toward room 307. My steps were steady, but each one felt like I was walking on broken glass. The door to 307 was locked. I raised my foot and kicked it in. The door slammed against the wall with a deafening crash. The room was dark. The windows were boarded up. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and antiseptic. A small, thin figure was curled up on an iron cot in the corner. It was Lily. I recognized her instantly, even though she was emaciated. Her hair was brittle and yellow, like a patch of dead grass. She wore an ill-fitting patient's gown, and her wrists and ankles were bruised with ligature marks. She heard the noise and looked up, terrified. Her eyes, once bright as stars, were now hollow and filled with fear. She looked at me, her lips moving, but no sound came out. In that moment, the dam broke. 10 years of living on the edge of a knife, and I hadn't shed a single tear. But now I was sobbing like a child. I walked over and slowly knelt beside her. "Lily, it's Mom." My voice was a raw, trembling whisper I didn't recognize. "Mommy's home." A flicker of something moved in her empty eyes. Then, as if summoning all her strength, she reached a hand toward me. Her arm was covered in track marks. I took her hand. It was cold, frail, nothing but bone. I pulled her in my arms. She was as light as a feather. I could feel her shallow breathing, the unnatural rhythm of her chest. I unbuttoned her gown. Across her chest was a long, recently healed scar, a grotesque centipede of flesh. My blood ran cold. I held her and ran out of the room. The men at the door saw me and tried to close in again. Cradling my daughter in one arm, I swept the muzzle of my gun across their faces. "Anyone who tries to stop me dies." I laid Lily across the back seat and drove to the best private hospital in the city, using every shortcut I knew. This was a hospital where the favors I'd earned with my life still meant something. I screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance. The hospital director himself was waiting with the team. When he saw Lily in my arms, his expression changed. "Now, get a surgical suite prepped. I want every specialist here immediately." Lily was rushed into the trauma unit. The red light above the door lit up. I stood in the hallway, covered in blood. Some of it was mine, from smashing through the door. But I couldn't feel the pain. All my senses were focused on that closed door. Hours later, the door opened. The director emerged, pulling off his mask. His face was grave. "Agent Collins, the situation is not good. The child is suffering from long-term malnutrition, extensive soft tissue damage, and severe psychological trauma. But the most critical issue is her heart. She's had a portion of her pericardium removed." My mind went blank. The pericardium. To save her from a congenital heart defect, I had pulled every string I had to get an experimental gene therapy from overseas. The drug was designed to stimulate regeneration of the heart muscle and pericardium. It was the only thing keeping her alive. Why would it be removed? The drug? What about the gene therapy I left for her? I grabbed the director's arm. He sighed. "Your husband, Greg Foster, retrieved the last dose a month ago. He said it was for Lily." We cross-referenced the file. The girl he brought in was indeed named Sophie. The name on her records was different, but he insisted we use Lily. Sophie, the imposter. I understood. Everything became chillingly clear. They hadn't just stolen my daughter's identity. They had stolen the medicine that was keeping her alive. A metallic taste filled my throat. My vision went black. 7 when I woke up, I was in a hospital room. Captain Miller was sitting by the bed, his face etched with worry. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" I struggled to sit up. "Lily, she's still in the ICU, but her condition has stabilized." I let out a breath, only for a tidal wave of fury to crash over me. I ripped the 4 from my arm. "I'm going back." "Ava, you need to calm down." Miller tried to hold me down. "How can I be calm?" My voice was a hoarse roar. "My daughter almost died. They stole her life-saving medicine. How the hell can I be calm?" Miller fell silent. He knew my history. He knew what Lily meant to me. After a long moment, he let go. "I'll send a team with you." "Don't bother." I stood up. "This is a family matter." I changed into my clothes and walked out of the hospital room. My home, the place I had fought for 10 years to protect, only to have it betray me. I returned to the penthouse. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The living room was empty. I walked toward Lily's room, the room I had once decorated as a pink fairy tale castle. Now, the walls were covered with tacky posters of pop stars. The floor was littered with empty boxes from luxury brands. And that girl, Sophie, she was lying on Lily's bed, wearing a face mask, listening to music. Greg was sitting on the edge of the bed, peeling an apple for her. He froze when he saw me. Sophie sat bolt upright, terrified. Why are you back?" I ignored them. My gaze locked onto the nightstand. A climate-controlled medical case sat there. Inside was the last dose of gene therapy I had secured for Lily. The syringe was empty. The medicine had been used. On this imposter. I started to laugh. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. My phone rang. It was the hospital. "Agent Collins, Lily is having a rejection episode. Her heart is failing. We need the gene therapy to stabilize her now. I hung up. My eyes moved slowly, deliberately from Greg to Sophie. It was a look that could poison. You both deserve to die. The color drained from Greg's face. He scrambled to his feet, putting himself between me and Sophie. Ava, listen to me. Lily. She developed a severe antisocial personality disorder. We sent her to the center for her own good. She was hurting Sophie. We had no choice but to give the medicine to Sophie. Lies. Effortless, shameless lies. My Lily was so gentle she'd cry if she stepped on an ant. Antisocial personality disorder. I walked toward them one step at a time. The sharp click of my heels on the hardwood floor echoed like a death knell. For her own good. So you locked her away in that hellhole and let them harvest her organs. For her own good. So you let an imposter live in her room, spend her money, and use the medicine that was keeping her alive. My voice was a whisper, but it made Greg tremble. I didn't know it would be like that. The people at the center said they were professionals. Professionals? I sneered. So professional they torture a child to the brink of death. I stopped in front of him. I raised a hand and gently touched his cheek. His skin was smooth, well cared for. Not like mine, which was a roadmap of scars. Greg, you disgust me. I snapped my hand back and slapped him across the face. The sound was sharp, explosive. His head whipped to the side, a red welt already rising on his cheek. He looked at me in disbelief. You hit me. Hit you. I grabbed the collar of his shirt and hauled him toward me. Today, I'm going to take your life. Sophie shrieked from the bed. She's going to kill us. Somebody help. I didn't turn around. I stared into Greg's eyes. The same eyes I once adored, now filled with nothing but fear and calculation. 10 years, I said. This is how you took care of our daughter while I was gone. The $150,000 I wired you every single month. Where did it all go? I told you to get her the best tutors, the best doctors, and you threw her in a place like that. Greg's lips trembled. He couldn't form a sentence. Ava, she was out of control. She was stealing, fighting. She set the nanny's hair on fire. Is that so? I let him go and pulled out my phone. I played a video. It was a home movie of Lily when she was little. On the screen, a tiny Lily was gently bandaging the paw of an injured stray kitten. She looked up at the camera and smiled, her eyes curving into little crescents. The teardrop birthmark by her left, I was perfectly clear. I know what kind of person my daughter is better than you do. I turned off the video. As for you, my gaze shifted to Sophie. What the hell are you? An imposter, daring to steal her place? I strode over, grabbed a handful of her hair, and dragged her off the bed. She screamed in pain. I hauled her into the living room and threw her onto the floor. The platinum necklace on her neck glinted under the lights. I reached down and ripped it off. The pendant hit the floor and broke open. It was empty. Lily's baby tooth was gone. Where is it? I asked. Sophie clutched her neck, staring at me in terror. What tooth? I don't know. You don't know? I picked up the broken pendant, squeezing in my palm. The hard edges dug into my skin. I remembered when Lily lost that tooth. She had cried, saying how much it hurt, but then she had given it to me like a precious treasure. Mommy, you keep it safe for me. It's my treasure. It was my treasure. Our treasure. And now it was gone. My rage ignited. I grabbed a fruit knife from the coffee table and pressed the tip against Sophie's cheek. I'll ask you one more time. Where's the tooth? Sophie was scared out of her mind. In the trash. I thought it was gross, so I threw it out. The trash. She threw my daughter's treasure in the trash. I smiled. The blade traced a thin, red line across her smooth cheek. She hissed in pain, but didn't dare move. Gross. Today, I'm going to show you what's truly disgusting. I grabbed her hand and slammed it onto the coffee table. I raised the knife. Greg lunged forward. Ava, don't. I've already called the police. The police? He called the police on me. I turned to look at him, my eyes like chips of ice. Good. Let's see who they arrest when they get here. Me, a decorated federal agent? Or you, a monster who abused his own daughter and conspired to commit fraud and theft? The color drained from Greg's face. He had forgotten. I was no longer an undercover operative hiding in the shadows. I was Ava Collins, a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a hero this city was supposed to respect. He was afraid, truly afraid. Ava, we're married. We have 10 years of history. History? Looking at his pathetic, deceitful face just made me want to vomit. The moment you sent Lily to that hellhole, I said, my voice dangerously low, the only thing left between us was a blood debt. I didn't look at him again. The knife in my hand came down. AR. Sophie's scream echoed through the penthouse. Her pinky finger had been severed at the knuckle. 11 blood splattered across my face. Warm and sticky. Sophie cradled her hand, writhing on the floor in agony. Greg collapsed, his face ashen. At that moment, the apartment door was thrown open. A middle-aged man in a police uniform, with the eagle of a deputy chief on his collar, rushed in. It was Deputy Chief Roberts of the KPD. He was flanked by several SWAT officers. Roberts saw the scene, and his eyes widened. "Collins, stand down," he commanded. I slowly stood up, wiping the blood from my cheek. "Chief Roberts, perfect timing. I have a couple of degenerates here for you to process." Roberts looked at Sophie on the floor, at her severed finger, and his face turned grim. "Degenerates? Collins, I think you're the one who's lost her mind. Do you have any idea who she is? She's Governor Vance's daughter. You just got your shield back, and you're already pulling a stunt like this? Governor Vance." It all made sense now. No wonder Greg was so bold. He'd hitch his wagon to a much bigger star. Greg scrambled toward Roberts as if he were a lifeline, crawling on the floor. "Chief, help me. She's insane. She's trying to kill me. And she abused Lily. Lily was covered in bruises because of her. We sent her to the center for her own good." Twisting the truth. Utterly shameless. Sophie was crying too. "Uncle Roberts, help me. Her daughter is a psychopath. She attacked me. I was just defending myself. Now she wants to kill me." A well-rehearsed duet. Roberts looked at me, his eyes filled with disappointment and fury. "Collins, I'm very disappointed in you. You served your country, and you won't be forgotten. But your commendations don't give you a license to be judge, jury, and executioner. Now, drop your weapon and come with me to be processed." The SWAT officers behind him raised their rifles, aiming at me. I laughed, a bitter, ironic sound. "Processed? All right, but I'm not going with you." I took out my phone and dialed a number. "Panther, you there? This is Ava Collins. I'm giving you 10 minutes. Scramble every operator you have. Lock down the entire city of Keystone, especially the highways leading to the state capitol. Without my direct order, not even a fly gets out. And tell your men if anyone tries to run the blockade. Use lethal force." A calm, steady voice replied from the other end. "Roger that. Mission accepted." I hung up and looked at the rapidly paling face of Deputy Chief Roberts. "Chief, I am now acting under federal authority as a special inspector. I have reason to believe that you, Governor Vance, Greg Foster, and others are involved in a conspiracy related to child trafficking, aggravated assault, and corruption. Until this investigation is complete, you and your men are being detained." As the words left my mouth, the sound of disciplined, marching footsteps echoed from outside, followed by the percussive roar of helicopter rotors. The Black Panthers, the most elite special operations unit in the country, the one I had built from the ground up. They were here. 12 Deputy Chief Roberts' face went from pale to white to a deep, blotchy purple. He stared at me in disbelief. You can't activate the Panthers. They report directly to JSOC. You have no authority." I didn't answer him. A man in black tactical gear, his face painted with camo, rappelled down from the roof. He crashed through the window and landed silently in front of us. It was the commander of the unit, call sign Panther. He snapped to attention and gave me a perfect salute. "Commander Collins, the Black Panther unit is fully deployed, awaiting your orders." "Commander?" Roberts and Greg stared, utterly baffled. They didn't know. Before I went undercover, I was the first and only female commander of the Black Panther unit. This unit was my creation. They answered only to me. I gestured toward Roberts and his SWAT team. "Disarm them. Keep them under guard." "Yes, ma'am." Panther waved his hand. A dozen operators flowed into the room, silent and swift as shadows. Within seconds, Roberts and his men were disarmed and secured. Roberts was shaking with rage. "Collins, this is mutiny." "Mutiny?" I walked over to him, looking down at him. "Chief, you seem to be mistaken about something. I'm not negotiating with you. I'm informing you." My gaze swept over Greg and Sophie. They were frozen in terror, especially Greg. He was slumped on the floor in a spreading puddle of his own urine, the foul stench filling the air. How pathetic. This was the man I had once loved, a complete and utter coward. As for Governor Vance, I paused, picking up a tissue from the table to wipe the blood from my hands. He'll be here soon enough to explain himself to me. Personally, 13, the area below the penthouse, was a sea of flashing lights and roaring engines. The entire building, the entire block, was locked down by the Black Panthers. Nothing in, nothing out. Greg looked out the window at the military-style operation unfolding below and finally shattered. He crawled to my feet on his knees. "Ava, I was wrong. I was so wrong. It was all Sophie. She seduced me. She's the one who made me send Lily away. It was all her idea. It had nothing to do with me. He was a blubbering mess, clinging to my leg, begging. I looked down at his grotesque, pleading face and felt a wave of nausea. I kicked him away. Nothing to do with you. Greg, do you take me for a fool? Without your consent, who could have touched my daughter? Without your signature, who could have taken the medicine I left for her? You're blaming it all on a woman. Are you even a man? My words were knives, twisting in his gut. He collapsed on the floor, speechless. I was done with him. I walked over to Sophie. She was still huddled in the corner, clutching her severed finger, trembling. Now it's your turn, I said. Tell me, where did my daughter's pericardium go? Sophie looked up, her eyes burning with hatred. I don't know anything. You're not getting anything out of me. Still defiant. I smiled. I pulled a chair over and sat down in front of her. From my pocket, I took out a small digital recorder and pressed play. Greg's voice filled the room. Baby, don't worry. I'll get my hands on that drug Ava left. And as for that little brat's pericardium, I've already got the surgeon lined up. The operation is next week. After that, your heart condition will be completely cured, and we can be together forever. It was a call recording I had just recovered from Greg's phone, one he had tried to delete. The blood drained from Sophie's face. She stared at Greg in disbelief. Greg just lay there like a boneless heap of trash. I turned off the recorder. Now, do you still want to tell me you don't know? My voice was soft, but it carried a deadly chill. Sophie, my patience is limited. Everything my daughter suffered, I will repay upon you 10 times over, 100 times over. So where should we begin? I picked up the blood-stained fruit knife and gestured with it toward her face. This pretty face, or that filthy heart of yours, the one you bought with my daughter's body parts. 14 Sophie completely lost it. She screamed, struggling to get away from me. Stay away. You're a monster. My father is the governor. He'll make you pay for this. The governor? I laughed. You think he has time to worry about you right now? Just as I said that, Panther approached and murmured something in my ear. I nodded. I stood up and walked to the window. Below, a motorcade of black sedans was pulling up. The lead car had a state government license plate. Governor Vance was here, sooner than I expected. The car stopped. A man with graying hair but a commanding presence got out, surrounded by aides. He looked up at my floor, his expression dark. I opened the window. A cold wind whipped into the room, blowing my hair across my face. I looked down at the man and gave him an ice-cold smile. Governor Vance, good to see you again. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly in the silent night. Governor Vance narrowed his eyes. He clearly recognized me, or rather, he had already done his homework on me. Agent Collins, what is the meaning of this? His voice dripped with authority. Illegally deploying a federal unit, detaining a public official, and assaulting a civilian. This is a flagrant disregard for the law. The law. I laughed. Governor, you want to talk to me about the law? When your daughter stole my daughter's life-saving medicine and harvested her organ, did you think about the law? When you used your office to cover up her crimes, did you think about the law? When you conspired with my waste of a husband to steal everything I had, did you think about the law? Each question was a bullet, aimed right at him. Governor Vance's face grew darker and darker. That's absurd. My daughter has a kind heart. She would never do such a thing. It's you. You're mentally unstable. You're a violent loose cannon. Still trying to deny it. Pathetic. I was done talking. I turned to Panther. Take those two downstairs. Let's have a little family reunion. 15 Greg and Sophie were dragged downstairs like sacks of garbage. Deputy Chief Roberts was taken down with them. I didn't go. I stood at the window, watching the drama unfold below with cold detachment. When Governor Vance saw the state of his daughter, her mangled hand, his eyes turned red with fury. He pointed up at me, screaming, "You lunatic! You're a goddamn monster! I'll see you rot in prison. I swear, I will make you pay for this." Sophie was wailing. "Daddy, help me. She's trying to kill me. She wants to cut out my heart." Greg was on his knees, banging his head on the pavement. "Governor, save me. It was all Ava. I had nothing to do with it." What a performance. The Black Panther operators surrounding them remained impassive, like stone statues. Only I knew their rifles were loaded and the safeties were off. One word from me, and the people downstairs would be turned into red mist. Governor Vance was still shouting. One of his aides took out a phone, clearly calling for backup. Pointless. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I'd already cut off all their escape routes. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the aide lowered his phone, his face pale. He whispered something to the governor. The governor's shouting stopped abruptly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a disbelief that, for the first time, was tinged with fear. He finally understood. He wasn't dealing with some local cop he could crush. He was dealing with someone who could bring the entire city, the entire state, to its knees. He was afraid. He was truly afraid. His tone changed from outrage to negotiation. Agent Collins, let's talk this over. Perhaps there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Why don't we sit down and discuss this calmly, all right? Talk. I smiled. You want to talk now? It's too late. I took out my phone and dialed another number. A Washington, D.C. area code. The call was answered almost immediately. Sir, it's Ava Collins. I assume you've been briefed on the situation. I just want justice. And if Keystone can't give it to me, if the state can't give it to me, then I'll take it myself. A deep, authoritative voice came from the other end. Ava, I'm sorry you had to go through this. Rest assured, this country will not allow you or your daughter to suffer such an injustice. I've already dispatched a special prosecution team from the Department of Justice. No one and no amount of political influence will protect the guilty. Now, give the phone to the governor. I tossed my phone out the window. Panther caught it and handed it to Governor Vance. With a trembling hand, the governor put the phone to his ear. I don't know what was said, but his knees buckled and he fell to the ground. The phone slipped from his grasp. He looked completely broken, as if his soul had been sucked out of him. His face was the color of ash. 16, the DOJ's special prosecution team arrived quickly. They flew in on a government jet that same night. The man in charge was Lead Prosecutor Davies, a man with a reputation for being relentless. Governor Vance, Deputy Chief Roberts, Greg, Sophie, and everyone else involved were taken into federal custody. The North Star Behavioral Center was raided and shut down that night. The director, the staff, no one escaped. All the children imprisoned there were rescued. A deep-seated cancer that had plagued Keystone for years was ripped out by the roots. Through it all, I stayed by Lily's bedside. She hadn't woken up yet. She just lay there, quiet and still, a fragile doll. The doctors told me her condition was complex. The damage to her pericardium could be surgically repaired, but the misappropriated gene therapy had caused irreversible damage to her system. She would likely suffer from a host of complications for the rest of her life. It could even shorten her lifespan. I held her cold hand, my heart feeling like it was being shredded. My Lily, my precious treasure that I had risked my life to protect, wounded beyond measure by the very person I had trusted to keep her safe. Prosecutor Davies came to see me once. He confirmed that Sophie's heart did, in fact, have my daughter's pericardial tissue grafted onto it. The surgeon was the city's top cardiac specialist, contacted by Greg through Deputy Chief Roberts. As for the money I'd sent, most of it was squandered by Greg and Sophie. Luxury cars, designer clothes, trips around the world. They were living in paradise while my daughter was suffering in hell. Davies also told me they'd found extensive evidence of bribery and corruption between Greg and Governor Vance. They had been using my name and reputation to defraud people and amass a fortune. The case was airtight. They wouldn't be getting out. I listened without expression. I only asked one question. What about Sophie? Davies paused. She has a severe congenital heart condition. Her doctors say she's unfit for incarceration. For now, she's under guard at the hospital. Unfit for incarceration, right? I stood up. Mr. Davies, thank you for the update. I'll handle the rest myself. I walked out of the hospital room. The Black Panther operators standing guard immediately fell and stepped behind me. Commander, where are we going? I looked out the window at the dark night to pay a visit to the unfit Miss Vance. 17, the hospital where Sophie was being held, was under heavy guard. 2 police officers stood outside her door. They couldn't stop me. My men took care of them quietly. I walked into Sophie's room unopposed. She was lying in bed, watching TV. She seemed to be recovering well. She jumped when she saw me, her hand instinctively reaching for the nurse call button. I walked over and unplugged it from the wall. Miss Vance, we meet again. I pulled a chair up to her bedside. She stared at me in terror, shrinking back against the headboard. What? What do you want? I'm telling you, there are cameras in here. You can't do anything. Cameras? I glanced up at the small dome in the corner of the ceiling. Panther had already taken care of it. Whatever happened in this room now would remain in this room. I don't want anything, I said with a smile, pulling a scalpel from my pocket. I had borrowed it from the ER. The blade gleamed under the fluorescent lights. I'm just here to take back what belongs to my daughter. Sophie's eyes were glued to the blade in my hand. She began to shake violently. No, stay away from me. Help. Somebody help me. She screamed her lungs out, but the 2 officers outside couldn't hear her. I stood up and walked toward her. Don't be afraid, I said. The procedure will be very quick. I promise you won't feel too much pain. After all, when they took my daughter's pericardium, they didn't even give her an anesthetic. That last sentence extinguished the final spark of hope in Sophie's eyes. leaving only pure, abject despair. I leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Did you know? Besides my marksmanship, my other specialty is anatomy. During my 10 years inside the cartel, I dissected over 100 bodies to prove my loyalty. I know the human body better than any surgeon. So don't you worry. I will remove that thing in your chest, the thing that doesn't belong to you. Perfectly. Not a millimeter more, not a millimeter less." I finished speaking and ignored the look of utter horror on her face. I raised a scalpel. I aimed it at the scar on her chest, a scar identical to the one on my daughter's. And then I brought it down. 18, I don't remember how I walked out of that room. All I remember is my hands covered in blood. Panther steadied me and escorted me back to Lily's room. I washed my hands, changed my clothes, and sat by Lily's bed as if nothing had happened. The next day, the news reported that Sophie Vance, daughter of the disgraced governor, had died overnight from sudden cardiac arrest. Complications from her surgery, they said. In his prison cell, Governor Vance's hair turned white overnight. Greg was sentenced to life without parole. All of his assets were seized and transferred into a trust for Lily, including the penthouse that Sophie had once occupied. Deputy Chief Roberts, the corrupt officials, the doctors, the staff at the center, all of them received the justice they deserved. The dust settled. The sky over Keystone seemed a little clearer. But only I knew it wasn't nearly enough. The punishment they received was not even 1/10,000th of the pain my daughter had endured. I stayed by Lily's side, never leaving. I fed her, cleaned her, talked to her, even though she was asleep most of the time. I brought in the world's best cardiac specialists. They created a detailed treatment plan for Lily. The surgery, to repair her pericardium with a synthetic graft, was a success, but her body remained weak, and the psychological wounds were far deeper. When she was awake, she was silent. Her eyes were empty. She wouldn't engage with anyone, not even me. The doctors called it severe PTSD. They said it would take a long time and a lot of patience to heal. I wasn't afraid. I had nothing but time and patience. I owed her so much. I would spend the rest of my life making it up to her. 19, I submitted my resignation to the department, letting go of all the honors and identities of my past. I was no longer Agent Collins. I was no longer the commander of the Black Panthers. I was just a mother, the mother of a girl named Lily. I sold the penthouse in the city, the one filled with sickening memories. I bought a house in the suburbs with a large garden. It was quiet, and the sunlight was beautiful. I planted rows and rows of sunflowers, Lily's favorite. I brought Lily home. Every day, I stayed with her. I read her stories. We drew pictures. We took walks in the garden. At first, she was resistant. She wouldn't speak. She wouldn't look at me. An accidental touch would make her flinch and tremble. It felt like a needle in my heart every time. But I didn't give up. I told her again and again, "Lily, don't be afraid. Mommy's here. No one can ever hurt you again." I placed the platinum necklace back around her neck. Inside the pendant, I had placed a new baby tooth, one I found among the few belongings they'd kept of hers. It was one she'd lost when she was 6. The day I gave it to her, she held it and cried. A gut-wrenching, soul-tearing cry. It was the first time she had made a sound like that since she came back. I held her and cried with her. We cried out all the pain, the grief, the years of missed moments. From that day on, she began to get better. Slowly, she started to smile at me, to call me Mom in a soft, quiet voice, to take my hand and watch the butterflies in the garden. I knew my Lily was coming back to me, piece by piece. 20 years later, Lily's physical health had mostly recovered. Her mental state was much more stable. She started attending a new school. She was still quiet, but she could talk with her classmates. Her art became more and more beautiful. Her canvases, once filled with dark, oppressive shades, were now bursting with sunlight, flowers, and smiling faces. We went to see Greg once. In prison. He looked much older, his hair almost completely white. He cried when he saw us, repeating, "I'm sorry," over and over. Lily didn't look at him once. She just squeezed my hand and turned to leave. I didn't look back either. Some people, some things, once they're gone forever. A few more years passed. Lily got into her dream university to study art. It was in another city. The day I took her to the airport, she hugged me and cried, "Mom, I'm going to miss you." I smiled and stroked her hair. "I'll miss you too. Take care of yourself." She nodded and walked through security. The necklace around her neck caught the light, glinting warmly. I stood there, watching her back disappear into the crowd. A silent tear rolled down my cheek. 10 years on the battlefield, I defended the country behind me. 10 years later, I came home to wage a different war, and I had to save the treasure in my hands. My mission was complete. My phone rang. It was Captain Miller. "Ava, it's time to come back. The team needs you. The country needs you." I looked up at the departures board, watching the screen show her flight taking off. I smiled. All right,